It's a deeply wounded inner child. Okay. And losing trade it's abandonment, it's trauma, it's abuse, right? It's loss, you know, it's not actually, but the emotional triggers are the same, right? So the only way that I know for me to be able to manage that in a way in order so that I can trade, profitably and consistently is to have someone asked me once, like, how do you control the inner child? And the answer is you can't, right? The inner child is this persona that one has to have a deep relationship with.
Just a quick pause before we get into this. Trading can be intense, and staying mindful during your session matters so much. That's why I created and am sharing a free 3-part audio experience that's helped me deeply. 1 for starting your day with calm intention, 1 to stay centered while you trade, and 1 to wind down with grace when it's time to stop. These tracks are yours. Just click the link in the description. Hey, welcome back. Here at the Market Mamas podcast, I cover a wide range of topics from the intricacies of day trading to mindset mastery and psychological growth, with the goal of the conversations being next level growth for all of us. My name is Becky, and I'm a US-based futures day trader from the Pacific Northwest. My trading experience includes trading stocks, options, crypto, and futures, with both trading a personal account as well as with prop funding companies. Over time, I found that I most enjoy the fast-paced world of intraday futures trading, so that is my primary day trading focus now. Thank you for joining me on the Market Mamas podcast today. Hey guys, welcome back, and I'm so excited. You guys know my very good friend Peter. He is by day a lawyer for a general counsel for a healthcare corporation, but our favorite is the fact that he's a day trader and my very good friend, and we are members of the same small trading community, learn and have been raised up as day traders together. And so a lot of our styles are similar, a lot of our journeys are similar, and so we really have developed a very strong bond that we are growing stronger as day traders through together. And I think that is so powerful as a trader to have people in your corner and your close circle that are experiencing the same things that you are, and you can grow together and have that safe space to have really important conversations with. And that is something that's very special about Peter and my relationship, and a few very special people in our community. And so today, Peter kind of showed up for me and wanted to come on and talk about a few really important things that he's working through and growing through, and lessons that we feel like will really bring value to anyone who is also pursuing day trading and personal growth. So thanks for being here, Peter. I'm really so excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Becky. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for our ability to be so candid with each other, because it's been tricky as we've got the skill to day trade. Now is where we're refining. We're figuring out where the holes in our system are and what parts of personal growth we haven't fully dug into and worked through. And so I think we're both on the strategy and the personal development side, really working on some stuff this summer. So where should we start?
Well, I think, per our discussion, right, the agenda for today is going to be twofold. One is, discussion of trading strategies, and then to a discussion of some of the psychology work that comes with, I think if one wants to be a consistently profitable trader, it's kind of the hard work that goes behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of interesting. You see, people or trader, they are on YouTube and they're posting all kinds of nonsense, and that's not real, right? As you know, all the hard work, I think, comes when we're not on the charts. And the hardest work is in between the ears, right? So I think that's our two subjects for today: the psychology of trading. We've talked about it before, and then the strategies of trading.
Yeah, I do kind of feel a little frustrated when I see little pop-ups on whatever social media with people's P&L and just all like exciting hype, but no structure behind it, no meat behind what they are doing in order to have these successful outcomes. And I think that's what I've always wanted Market Mamas to be, is like, what is the transformational subjects and growth opportunities that we're working through? And so, yeah, I'm all about this conversation today.
Yeah.
So let's start with the strategy. Let's do that.
Yeah. And, this has not been, I've not done this all the time, but, as you know, the guy who got me into a day trading, a good friend named Seth Miller, right? I give him a lot of credit for getting me started and giving me tips. We have two mentors, right? We have Jermaine, and then you and I have Seth, right? And Seth was the one who told me, maybe it was a couple months ago or more. Actually, he told me this 6 years ago, but I wasn't paying attention. But a couple months or more that,
You weren't ready.
Yeah, to really be able to, it has to be your trade setups have to be replicable. And so to do that, you have to define them with extreme particularity, right? And so, as you know, what I've started to do is just that, right? And one example that I would give is one of the trade setups that I use is called the rhythm trade. And Jermaine kind of taught us this in his school, but it's the idea that if a market is imbalanced, right? So it's imbalanced. We have three market conditions, right? And there's only three. It's imbalanced down, it's rotational, or it's imbalanced up. As you know, Becky, in the course of a given day, it can be one or more, right? So it can be imbalanced up, and then it can rotate for the rest of the day, right? And we see that. And so we have to understand market condition. And once we understand market condition, then we can apply our trade setups. And, the rhythm trade is really good, for an imbalanced market, which we've seen a lot of. I think you and I have talked about this, but 2025 we've seen more imbalanced days than we've ever experienced in 2024, right? And I think,
Yeah.
I'm not making a political statement. We have a new administration in, there are a lot of activities around, tariffs and trade and all that stuff that impact the markets. And therefore there's more volatility. Good for us, right?
Yes.
But, it creates this imbalanced scenario where that's a really good setup to use, right? And by defining with particularity, what I mean, it has to be very, very specific, like first of all, what is an imbalanced market? Okay. So it basically means it has to be moving in one direction. And the market, as you know, doesn't just go up, right? It goes up, comes back, goes up, comes back, goes up, comes back. On the up and the pullback, okay, that's the rhythm. Okay. And I was just speaking to another friend this morning who was learning to train. His name is Adi. I'm looking at basically if it's going up, the pullback, the rhythm is support. Okay. Is support, you might think. And then now as you know, we have our VWAP bands on our charts, right? And the support that is at some band, let's say. And then so what I do is I say, okay, I used to not do this. I say, I'll just trade the rhythm. Well, what does that mean? First of all, if it's going up, it has to make a high, has to come down, has to hit this rhythm level, okay, and then I mark it. Has to make a new high. In fact, has to hit the +2 band on the VWAP, okay? Has to pull back, okay, to the band where the rhythm was. Now, if I'm going to go in where that hit is, the first hit of the rhythm, and the high of day is my first target, has to be at least 7 points in ES. Okay. It's not at least 7 points in ES, not interested. The slope of VWAP has to be at least 20 degrees, if not more. Okay. So now we're looking at a new high, pull back to support, okay, the rhythm. Another new high, has to make a new high. Kind of a new high doesn't count, okay? It has to be kind of aggressive too. You know what I mean? Like it can't be just like, if it's just drifting up, it's just not very interesting, right? You're talking about a push up of several points. Yes, right? You're looking at, 7, 8, 10-point pushes up, up, right? Pull back. And I take it on the first retest of the rhythm. Do I necessarily get in there? No, I used to, and I got into trouble. I wait for it to push. So I watch the 4-minute candle, and if it pushes and I'm starting to see a wick away from, I'll get in on that trade. Or if I want to be more conservative, I'll wait for the candle of the 4-minute to close, and it closes in the direction, and then I'll take it on the break of the high. Okay. That's usually what I'll do. But, it's defined with that. I mean, if you look at my chart, it's like 3 pages of definitions. But what that has done in terms, and that's just one of my setups, what's that done in terms of my trading, it's really put guardrails. And Seth has been really good about that. What's really put guardrails around my trading, because if I don't see the market moving with that much particularity, like I just don't take the trade. It's kept me out of some other trades that I would have taken because, I got to check so many boxes, right? Before I can enter and be consistent with my rules. Okay. Now, what do you think about that, Becky? You have your own setups and, yours are different from mine and you have your own rules. How did that work for you?
Yeah, I actually really appreciate following along with the very in-depth work you're doing with Seth because you are really fine-tuning your process, which is amazing. And I think that that's a sign of trader maturity because it takes you away from more of the gambling mindset of like, I think this is going to hold. I feel like this is going to work here, so I'm going to get in. And then what you have done is really like dialed it in and placed those guardrails around what you will and will not entertain and put your accounts on the line for. And so you're highly specific in terms of if I don't see this, it's not good enough. there's not enough confluences and support for what I am trying to trade, which is an imbalanced rhythm trade. And so when you really have seen enough markets, you've seen enough rhythm trending days to kind of know what she does and doesn't do, then that's when you can start to fine tune this and really write out your specific trade plan. And our community has really encouraged being specific too in dialing in what you need to see in order to execute a trade. And I think that is how we ultimately achieve consistent profitability, is by being so specific and not entertaining all the maybe trades. And that really transforms, I think, a P&L over time, because you're just taking less trades. If you are so specific, there's not going to be endless opportunities in the market. There's going to be a couple each day, depending on the day that we're having, and they have to fit certain rules. So I'm so thankful that you came on today to talk about this, because it really shows like next levels that you can get to once you have had enough experience of looking at the market and seeing how she's moving. Like, that's really a great example.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think, Becky, it goes to something you and I have spoken about kind of offline, which is one has to know sort of, one's limitations, right? As a trader, right? I am not an intuitive trader, right? Like, we know people, right, who can come, show up, look at the market and say, oh, it's doing this. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Like, at any moment in time, I don't know what the market's going to do, right? So I have a model, for what I think it will do. And then I can define that model with extreme particularity, right? So that way, when I see it. So now when I get in, right, I took some trades last night, right? They were such high probability, trades, because they met all the criteria, right?
Nice.
And again, it keeps me from clicking the mouse, right? Because there's no reason to. And I know, and there are intuitive traders. I'm just not one of them, quite frankly. Right?
Well, and I think to be an intuitive trader, I mean, the only way to get intuition about something is to see it and experience it just hundreds and hundreds of times. And so to say that you're an intuitive trader in the first couple of years of your trading session, I mean, I'm going to call bullshit on that, to be honest, because intuition is something you earn. That's an earned thing to say that you might have involved in your system. And that's based on exposure to a situation. I mean, in our other fields, as a lawyer and as a nurse, like, intuition is a factor too, because you have to be able to feel out people and a situation and temperaments and emotions. And so that's something that we gained over years and years in a profession. And so when day trading, when you start with that, like, it's no different. You have to just be exposed in order to develop that. And so early on, and when you're still stabilizing with consistency, I think having hard rules is so protective. And that's the whole thing with trading, is that when you're putting real money on the line, like, you have to have protection in order to not just blow it up all the time. And so that's why, like, a stop loss, I really prefer to call it a protective stop. I mean, that's what keeps you safe, and having a well-defined process keeps you safe in terms of not entertaining every potential trade that could exist.
Right.
It's a great system.
Yeah. And so I would say, for people who are learning to trade, I just, that's the first thing you do, just define your setups, right? They should be several pages. And as you know from mine, I've not only defined them, I've just, cut and pasted screenshots right into my trading step document and say, oh, okay, this is the perfect example, right? This is what I should look for. Okay. And then I know that, and I often say, when I post on our community, I say, oh, like on June 15th, I took this trade, and it was exactly the same setup that showed up today, right? So it's and even though, Becky, here's just where sort of thing, like, even doing that, right, I can be wrong,
Absolutely.
the nature
That's
of
a margin of error that's involved in trading, and we have to be able to respect that.
Right. And that goes to the second part of our conversation. So did you have any more thoughts about,
Just to what you said, I think a lot of trading podcasts and people out there offering advice will say to journal. And I think this is one nod to why and how to journal, because journaling is a very broad thing to say. Like, what the hell do I actually write? Well, to the strategy aspect of this, you should write what type of trade it was. Was it a rhythm? Was it trading? Was it a rotational day? What you saw that made you enter. And over time, collecting that data, that's going to help you create the trade plan that you're speaking to, Peter. Because I would say that my trade plan that I defined mine's 4 pages, that I defined this summer, was based on, years of trades that I took, and then recognizing patterns throughout there and what has worked for me more consistently, and then pulling that out and then writing out the rules related to that. And so if you're new to trading and you're new to journaling and you're not quite sure what to write, I would say pour in all the details that you can into each trade that you execute and why you think you took it. And then the more trades you take that are similar, that will help you create this trade plan for yourself, this playbook essentially these are the trades that I see. This is how I see them. This is why I see them. These are screenshots, like you said, is an excellent way to capture those if you can in your journaling platform or whatever you use. That way you can make really effective notes and create your trade plan. And so I think that that's a powerful tool for people who are figuring out how to pull their data of their trade system together and then create such a trade plan.
So I'm getting this book because this is my journal, right? Okay.
Okay.
And
Yes.
I'm just saying here, on August the 4th, 6:30, the market's imbalanced up. It made a rhythm at the plus band, one band around 6:04 a.m. The M478 candle made a new high, was an evening star, took a short. Okay. And then I write down my trades in here. So yeah, you're right. The journaling, and then we can go back and say, oh, what worked, what didn't work, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
Which one was red? Which one was green? What factors could I miss? What did I miss in that day? Did I think it was trending and it was actually rotational? And then that's how you over time develop your system. And I think intuition follows that down the line. That just can be an added confluence for your trading system.
right.
But in the beginning, in the first, I don't know, ever, to be so specific is so powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to what you said about the rhythm trade, I just wanted to find like a few things that early traders, because I think we get a mix of different traders that watch this show, but like that's also Dow theory, right? Like the higher highs and higher lows, and then for or in the inverse, lower lows and lower highs. And so that is definitely how a way to define a trending day. But then when we're talking about the VWAP bands, we use a VWAP band, but then we also put on standard deviation bands away from the mean. And so the plus 0.5, 1, 1.5, and 2 are levels that we often see reaction at. And so on an imbalanced day, it'll often be like around the 1 band or the 0.5 band where it will almost get back to VWAP, which is the mean, but it will hover on one of those bands beyond that and find support if we are to be a trending day. And then holding powerfully on one side or the other of VWAP, which is the potential mean of the start of the day. That's how you can also find further like validation for those type of trending days is like if you can get that general curve, which gives you the slope and gives you the bounces, and it's a way to grade where it might pull back to. And so it's a nod, I think, to the VWAP bands and, just watching the market and seeing how she's reacting at what sort of dynamic levels you're seeing throughout the day. And so again, use different tools from different people, such as Peter not using the VWAP bands with the plus 1 and 2 standard deviation bands, and then just watching it and seeing how she reacts when she hits this general area in that rhythm. So that's our little strategy tidbit on that, because
I
that was
totally
I have really good information.
I totally agree. And on the rhythm, it's also very important to, first of all, make sure the market makes the rhythm first. I used to think, oh, this is kind of the rhythm, and I'll take it, but it hadn't made the rhythm first. Okay. And then if I'm going to trade it, I take the first retest of it that holds. Because by the second or third or fourth time, I mean, the rhythm may not be the rhythm anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And the day gets old and the average range starts to get filled out, and then trades towards the end of the day where we just want like it to, fly to freaking the sky. Less reliable.
Much less reliable. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah. So, shout out to Seth Miller for, holding my feet to the fire on that thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jermaine for teaching us the rhythm trade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Our
I
two
think
mentors. Yeah.
Yeah, learning from people who are more advanced than us, both Jermaine and Seth, is a powerful opportunity to really pick the brain of someone who just has experienced more and knows more and can speak to it more clearly and then can help us refine our vision quicker. And so I absolutely really appreciate all of the people that are raising us up.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. So part two.
Yes.
Okay. In our community, we have we have a channel just dedicated to the psychology of trading, and a smaller subset of us meet every Thursday morning to go over our psychology work. And we have homework there that we do on a regular basis. I guess here's when I started trading, I naively thought that trading would work when I could discover or create or somehow divine the optimal strategy. Okay. And then when I did that, then I would be a consistently profitable trader. Okay.
Same.
That's so complete like bullshit, right? At
Yeah.
this stage, right? It's not. Our strategy is important. Yeah, I think we have to have basics, like understanding what the market condition is understanding what the bigger time frames are doing, what the market generally is doing is very important, right? But then, the rest of it is psychology, right? And by psychology, people think it's kind of not necessarily a great topic or maybe even a bit taboo in some ways, but I think it's for me, if I had to put a number to it, I'd say it's 99% of the equation. Okay. It's not 5% of the equation. It's 99% of the equation. Okay. And you and I were talking about this earlier, but it is interesting to me that so many people who are attracted to this particular endeavor, right, also have inner work that needs to be done. Okay.
Yeah.
And the inner work that we do is quite deep, it's quite profound. Okay. But without it, like we can't, at least I can't, I'll speak for myself, I wouldn't be able to trade. And so what I've been doing most recently, the last, I don't know, couple, 3 months, is a lot of what is called inner child work. Okay. And I got to give credit to one author here, if you don't mind me showing the book.
Absolutely.
It's a fellow named John Bradshaw. His book is Homecoming. And it's been incredible. I've actually got another one of his books that's called The Shame That Binds Us. And I haven't read it yet, but I'm just going through this book as exercises. The premise of the inner child is we all have one. Okay, it's the little younger version of us, and to the extent that we've lived life with sort of trauma, right? Or how do I say? Everybody has some form of something that happened. Okay, whether in their formative years or whether as young adults, adolescents, where there's some things that happen, unless the upbringing is completely idyllic, right? Which I've not met yet. Okay. Strangely enough, the people who are drawn to day trading, right, have, inner child issues, right, that need to be resolved. It's almost like this is the activity that triggers that deep work that needs to be done in order to heal, you know, not just so that one can, function better in the world and be at peace, but also so that one can trade effectively. Okay. And so the inner child work, as starts off with, conversations with the inner child. It starts off with, writing people in our lives who may have caused us some harm, and expressing on how we feel. And then giving a lot of aid and comfort to the inner child, saying, I love you, you're protected, you're safe. Nothing can happen back here that can hurt you. For me, okay, and so I think people who have traded for a while can identify with a persona called the manic trader, right? The manic trader shows up sometimes, or has in the past, and the manic trader it's just click, click, click of the mouse, right? And before you know it, like all one's accounts are blown, right? I know that's never happened to you, but it's happened to me. And I think it's happened to everyone who has, traded for any period of time, right? And it
Yeah.
almost feels like I'm being possessed, you
Yeah.
know? I thought, what on earth is going on? And, as I've done more and more work on this, it is the idea that, hey, it's a deeply wounded inner child. Okay. And losing trade it's abandonment, it's trauma, it's abuse, right? It's loss, you know, it's not actually, but the emotional triggers are the same, right? So the only way that I know for me to be able to manage that in a way in order so that I can trade, profitably and consistently is to have someone asked me once, like, how do you control the inner child? And the answer is you can't, right? The inner child is this persona that one has to have a deep relationship with, right? So there's little Peter and have to say to him before I trade, or young Peter who's, teenager, and say, look, I love you. You're safe. I'll protect you. You can't get hurt. Okay? You will not get hurt in this trading endeavor that we're doing. And it does mean, Becky, as like there's a possibility we're going to be in a losing trade or two, right? It happens. But when that happens, the deeply wounded inner child, once he takes over and starts clicking the mouse, I can just kiss my money goodbye. Right? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? You have anything to add? I know you have a lot of insight into this, right? You're in healthcare now, among other things.
Yeah. A few things, yeah. First, I really appreciate your candidness with this because it's not something that is widely discussed, and I think that it should be. I think it deserves a little bit more weight in this arena, especially because day trading really puts a lot of your emotions on the line. When you enter a trade and there's real risk, real money, financial outcomes that you're relying on potentially or hoping for at a minimum, it heightens your emotions and it brings your adrenaline in all the time, like right away. And you go to this like rapid fire brain response, not the calm, patient, logical focus response once you start getting that heightened risk in your situation. And so we will revert to deeper subconscious responses that if you don't identify and anticipate and work to manage separately, then you're kind of fucked because you can really give in to like fear, revenge, like fighting the market instead of like being at peace and being able to take a small loss and know that you're okay. And this, like a negative outcome on the charts doesn't mean anything about you. And so if anyone is having
Right.
carryover from
Right.
earlier life, yeah,
Yeah.
like that carryover can really impact the way you would manage a trade because when that risk is on the line, we will go to a more subconscious response. And so if you go into a fight or flight based on anything that happened earlier in your life that you felt like you had to fight through, that's so dangerous because fighting with the market is a recipe for over leveraging and revenge trading so badly. And I definitely, have had to work through those experiences myself as well. And I think that what you are saying is spot on for if you really are hitting a wall with this, it's an opportunity to hear conversations like this and recognize that maybe you need to go deeper into your situation in your entire life
Yeah.
and figure out what could be a catalyst that maybe you haven't given enough weight and attention to.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And well, very well said. Very, very well said. This sort of segues a little bit or touches on it, not segues, but touches on a subject that you and I talked about in a previous video, which is, we call it relationship hygiene, right? But it comes into play with this all the inner child work that we've been talking about that we do, which is, the place where one trades, the place where one lives, the place where, we spend our time has to be safe. Okay. And if we have a wounded inner child, we probably did not have very many safe spaces growing up. Okay. And so, but as adults, we can create those for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And when we talked about relationship hygiene, right, that was one of the things that you and I discussed. Because if the world that we live, the people that in our lives are not supportive, safe people for us to do this very difficult endeavor of trading, then for me, they just can't be part of my life. I mean,
Yeah.
that period, right? And I've cut off people I've known for decades, right? Who are just not supportive. And, looking back, I wish I'd have done it, 20 years ago, right? I didn't have enough awareness, then. And it has really made my day-to-day living a lot more enjoyable. The people I have in my life, I love dearly. The people they're very supportive of what I do, right? Like you, like Kamwaji, like Jermaine, like Seth, all these folks who are around us all the time. We communicate, daily. It's very, very gratifying. But that has helped my inner child to feel like he's in a safe place. Okay. Because as an adult, have made it a point to make sure that we live in a safe place. Right. And to the extent that there's anything that is not that way, I am so, my relationship hygiene is unbelievably harsh. Okay. Yeah. That was my wife that just poked her head in. Yeah.
Hi, Grace.
My lovely wife. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, and at the risk of sounding a little bit callous, like that's our prerogative. Like once you become not a small child anymore, you're not reliant on any parental situation or support system besides maybe your spouse or what you've created. We get to make our lives in the image that we want. We are the creators of our experience in this one life right now that we get to have.
Yeah.
And if there are people influencing it that you have identified from multiple instances that bring you down and put you in a shitty headspace and like mess with your peace and focus and energy and what you want to do with your life, we're not required to keep them in our circle and in our daily lives. And there's, I guess, some gray areas and some range with how you can limit that versus cut them. But I mean, I think a core element of being a day trader is making sure that the immediate support system around you and influence into your emotional stability day to day has to be solid because we have to be able to maintain that peace and focus and belief in ourselves and worthiness to be a successful day trader and focus on our process and drill into our trading system. I mean, it's so multifactorial what it takes to be a consistently profitable trader, and to have any sort of negative emotional impact from someone else like we don't need that. Like that doesn't have to be a creative force in your life, because we are the controllers of the creative forces in our lives. And so I really appreciate you just calling it out and being so real with me today, because I do think that's our prerogative, and we should feel like we are validated in doing what we need to do for ourselves, because this is our life right now that
This
we
is
are
our
making,
life.
and so we get to call it.
Yeah. 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 Like, I tell people, everybody knows there's nothing more important to me than this, right? So this is a sacred space for me, right?
Yeah.
And to the extent that there's any threat to it, it gets eliminated, right? And I have a group of not group of people, but to the extent that they're in my life, there's been category of folks, that I used to sort of, kind of turn a blind eye to or even tolerate, and you might know someone like this or not, but it's the holier than thou types, you know, the holier than thou types. I don't know why. For me, yeah, so many people were holier than thou that were in
Yeah.
my inner circle. And then my thought was, and after a while we started doing this, I was like, why,
Yeah.
like why the fuck, And so I have been very, very relentless, about ferreting that out. Yeah.
I mean, that personality trait right there, holier than thou, is a terrible one to have any influence in your psychology as a trader. Because to think that you're always right and it has to work out because you decided this is what's going to happen, like that's the epitome of having a terrible bias when you potentially are trading. To be like, of course we're bearish because I looked last night and this is what I saw, and so I'm going to short all day. But then if the market is not doing that in the day, you have to be flexible and open and curious instead of rigid and aggressive. And you can't boss her. Like, Miss Market is the boss. We are not the boss of her. We have to take her cues. And so holier than thou, I mean, that personality trait is not pleasant for a lot of reasons, but especially when we relate it to our journey as traders.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. One of the things when I was looking for a spiritual teacher, right, the quality that I wanted to see the most, and my friend told me that, and my friend the monk told me about this, right? I used to work with him and he wanted to become a monk. His name is Brother Kamalalanda. And he said when he was looking for a teacher, he wanted to find one who was, yes, as close to God as possible with extreme humility, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, same applies for us in what we do, also in our spiritual lives, right? Extreme humility, right? And that's I think it's a very rare quality. I wanted to mention one more thing about the inner child, right? So my morning routine, right, starts off with me. Go off and I get a cup of coffee. I then go meditate. My meditation is usually, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. Okay. And then in that time, I also take time to speak to my inner child. And the question I ask every morning, when I'm able to ask it and be present and listen, I'm much more effective. The question is, like I said, well, first of all, I asked, this is from John Bradshaw's book, by the way. It's like, okay, first of all, how old are you? So which version of me am I speaking to? That's the first question. And then secondly, and it's interesting because my inner child will tell me, okay, so lately it's been a younger version of me that is in high school. I'm dealing with the high school stuff. I know maybe you never had any high school stuff. I had a lot of high school crap. Okay, so and then the second question is, what do you need, right? And that's a very interesting question because if I can answer that question, if he can answer that question for me, and I can provide it, it's actually a fairly. So he might say, okay, I want to, like I want to go watch the Fantastic Four movie. Let's say I can say, okay, it's 6:30 in the morning, so we can't do that. But I tell you what, here's what I promise you, right? We'll go watch it, like sometime this week. Okay, we'll pick a time. We'll go buy tickets. I'll ask, Grace if she wants to come. Well, she did, and we actually watched it yesterday, and it was very good, right? And so that's actually a very important part of inner child work. I thank, John Bradshaw for that. I think it is Dr. Bradshaw. I think I thank him for that. It's like to ask the inner child, like, what do you need? You know, and then to sit back and listen, and that has a very calming effect, right?
Yeah. Peter, I need to do that more in my morning, because I think that it's a really powerful question, to identify kind of where your emotions are at and what stage of your life they might be experiencing. But then what do they need? Because then you can address, like, if you're feeling anxious about such and such, or your desire is focused on this, like you address that head on before you enter your trading system, your morning, in order to execute as a day trader.
Right.
You're basically front attacking what might be in your subconscious once you start trading. And so you're basically opening yourself up and inviting the questions in to address them. That's so powerful. it's such a great part of what a pre-market routine could be, because you need to, give full credence to the things that might sabotage you, and then say, I'm not going to do that today. Like, we're going to work on that later, but I hear you. And we're going to set this to the side for this time. Cause right now I'm going to follow my process and I'm going to be focused and attentive here. And this can be addressed at another time. You're still that part of what I like about the inner child work, side note and related, is that it doesn't shut it down cold turkey. Like, I don't have time for this shit. Like, I'm not going to do it. Instead, it like opens it up and says, like, I know that this is a part of me and who I am and where I come from. And I don't hate it. I can't hate it. It's who I am. But I want to address it and heal it and settle it instead of bury it, which I think is totally different approaches. And one is powerful for true growth and actual management so that you can do a high functioning career like day trading. And one is just burying something, so it's going to come up even more. If you if you think that you're ignoring it, it's not going away. It's not being healed and settled. That's what the difference is for me.
Right, right, right. It's definitely not being healed and settled. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah, yeah,
Beautifully said,
yeah,
Peter.
yeah. It's very well said. It's very well said. It's part of kind of and it's become my morning sort of ritual, right? Like, how old are you? What do you need? You know, and sometimes it is like, that's not something that I can, get you, but sometimes I can't. So suppose the answer, this has been the answer, sadly. Sometimes, like, hey, I kind of want an ice cream. I'm like, okay, it's 6 in the morning, but okay, I'll get you. We can go have an ice cream, and that's okay. Have a bite of ice cream. It's okay. It's very, the inner child work sometimes is very like a young child, right?
Well,
Right. So, yeah. So for me, I tell you, Becky, without that work, I've had a really good string of weeks right now, but without that work, those two things, two boxes, checked, I really could not, kind of do it. So I'm very grateful, that I have the resources around me to do that. I'm very grateful for people like you who have been supportive, part of my trading community, and, Jermaine and Seth and sort of others. And the fact that we have this unbelievable, training, and now we have a skill, right?
yeah.
One thing that you and I should talk about at some point, probably on a different, episode, is that we're coming into a time in the world where there's just so much uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
And I have so many friends right now, and we live in Redmond, Washington, right? As you've been here. We're about a mile and a half from Microsoft main campus, where I spent a big chunk of my career. But because of AI, right, layoffs are coming, and they're fast and furious, right? And many people who have been there, who have worked for a while, if they've been there a long time, they're fine, right? But if they're not, it can be very, very unsettling, right? To think that, hey, AI is coming to replace my job, right? And I mean, just Microsoft in the last, this year, it's about what 15,000 layoffs, right? Largely, and there's more. We know there's more coming, right? And not just one, but many others as well, right? We could see it in all the, what they call the Magnificent Seven companies, right? There's Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Meta. I think that it's very going to be very, very disruptive. And the question really is now, what do people do, right? Now, one of the reasons I'm teaching my daughter to trade, who's in grad school, is because I want her to have skills. So worst comes to worst, at least how to go to the markets, right, and generate an income for yourself. So if something goes awry, you can pay the rent. You know where your next meal is coming from. It's all very important, right, for people, right? So we should talk about this at some other point, because I think that's a fairly important subject these days. With the idea that, hey, like I have friends now who are interested because they're kind of in this quandary, also, and what I tell them, and what you've told us people, is like, it's a great thing, it's a wonderful thing to do, but it's hard and it takes time. Go slow, right? Go slow. Right.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much uncertainty in this world and many areas, and AI and that industry is just just one subset even of the uncertainty that many of us are experiencing. And retirement is not always going to cover the way that you want to live as well. If you're, getting a little bit older and you're starting to think about what you want to do for the next 40 years of your life, this is such a beautiful skill to really kind of lock in. But to your point at the end there, it's not a quick money solution. And so it
It,
does take time. So, you
it's
know, start if you are debating, because it is an avenue that you can be successful with. But the whole point of this episode is that we've been training for greater than 4 years and we're still identifying areas that we need to fine tune and put significant attention on to dial it in, such as defining our strategies very precisely, as well as addressing this inner child that is kind of the root of the psychological hurdles that we're working through. And so, even year 4, we're still fine tuning in order to get even better consistency. And so, this is a long game opportunity, day trading, but it is absolutely a beautiful opportunity. And you get the right people around you. There's so much potential here. And so I agree with the gratitude factor. I mean, I'm so, so, so grateful. I'm relatively new to Seth, but Jermaine has been absolutely transformational for me over
Oh
the
yeah.
years.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Oh,
Both of our mentors are fabulous people. Fabulous
yeah.
people, right? Nothing but gratitude for them. What they
Yeah.
teach is complementary, you know,
Yeah.
and
Which is a nod to the fact that what they teach is what we need to learn, because they are both long term. They've been in this market way longer than us. And they're saying, you got to deal with these things and you got to lock in. And so that's the kind of information we want to gobble up to actually really make the changes that they have made, because they are financially independent from trading. And that's the whole freaking goal of being a day trader, right?
right, right. That is, yeah, yeah, yeah. That is, yeah. We should at some point have another, kind of how are we doing time wise? I want to do a quick time check with you here.
Yeah, I think probably we're good on like length. So yeah, let's save it for another one, because we definitely, I mean, you're such a wealth of knowledge, Peter, and I'm so, so grateful to have you on as my guest every single time,
Oh,
because you're
same.
just really candid and available for these important topics.
Yeah, same here. Same here. Every time we have something new to discuss, right? And this is something you and I have been dealing with for the past few months, right?
Yeah. It's been heavy work this summer where we've done exercises. You're working in that book, and I need to get to that. I'm currently in a book I want to finish, but then that one's next on my list. But actually doing homework exercises. I tell my kids when I attend live stream stuff, I'm like, I'm in class. Like, I consider this like online education, and I'm still fine tuning and learning from mentors. And so I still do homework because I want the work that is going to continue to level me up. And that's what we are talking about today, is the work that comes when you're still leveling up.
Yep, 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 yep. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Becky. Hey, thank you for having me. What a great, always fun to chat with you, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
same. I'm so grateful for you, my friend.
yeah.
And Peter's going to be back. So
What? Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you. Have a good day. Okay.
yeah. Bye, everyone. Happy trading.